The wind howled across the barren surface of Draconeth 7, carrying red dust that painted everything the color of rust. Kale pulled his worn jacket tighter around his thin frame as he walked the familiar path toward the old shrine. At 14, he had learned that loneliness weighed heavier than any physical burden, and today that weight pressed down on his shoulders like a stone. The refugee colony behind him buzzed with the usual sounds of 100 different species trying to survive together. The VRYNN clicked their mandibles in irritation at the water rationing. The Althari hummed their three-tone songs of homesickness. The few other humans kept to themselves, as they always did. Nobody really talked to Kale anymore, not since his grandmother died 6 months ago. He climbed the rocky hill where the ancient shrine stood, a massive structure of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Galactic Council had declared a protected historical site, though nobody seemed to care much about it. According to faded information placard that still stood near the entrance, this was the resting place of Vorthax, one of the last of the ancient dragons. Kale had learned in school that the dragons were not really dragons at all, but an alien species so old that dozens of civilizations had worshipped them as gods before going extinct themselves. The creature inside had been sleeping for 10,000 years. Some scientists said it was dying. Others said it was already dead, just a preserved corpse in a fancy tomb. Either way, nobody visited anymore except Kale. He slipped through the partially open entrance and walked down the dim corridor. Emergency lights still functioned here, casting a pale blue glow on walls covered in symbols that nobody could read anymore. The shrine's interior was vast, with a domed ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. At the center lay Vorthax. Even in stillness, the creature took Kale's breath away. It was enormous, easily the size of 3 colony transport ships stacked together. Its scales were the deep purple of a bruised sky, each one as large as Kale's entire body. Massive wings lay folded against its sides, and its long neck curved so that its horned head rested on the chamber floor. The dragon's eyes were closed and had been for millennia. Kale settled into his usual spot on a fallen piece of stonework, about 20 meters from the dragon's head. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out his most precious possession, a simple wooden flute that had belonged to his grandmother. She had brought it all the way from Earth, carried it through the evacuation of their dying world, kept it safe through the chaos of the refugee ships. Before she died, she had taught Kale the basics of how to play it. His fingers found familiar holes, and he brought the instrument to his lips. The first note came out shaky, as it always did. He had no teacher now, nobody to tell him if he was doing it right. But here, in the silence of the shrine, nobody could judge him either. He played the melody his grandmother had taught him, an old Earth folk song whose name he had forgotten. The notes echoed off the ancient walls, traveling up into the darkness of the dome above. Kale closed his eyes and let the music carry away his thoughts. He pictured his grandmother's wrinkled face, the way she would smile when he got a note right, how she would tell him stories of dragons from Earth mythology. She used to say that music was humanity's gift to the universe, that even when they had lost their planet, even when they were scattered across the stars as refugees, humans could still create beauty through song. Kale had not understood what she meant then, but here in the shrine, playing for an audience of one dead alien god, he was beginning to grasp it. The melody filled the chamber, simple and pure. Kale played the song 3 times, then switched to another tune his grandmother had taught him. He lost track of time, letting his fingers move across the holes while his mind drifted. He did not notice the faint shimmer that passed across Vorthax's scales. He did not see the barely perceptible rise and fall of the dragon's massive chest. He did not hear the deep, subsonic hum that began to resonate in the walls themselves. Kale simply played, a lonely human boy making music in the darkness. While above in the colony, scientists began detecting unusual energy readings they could not explain. Something was stirring the ancient shrine, responding to vibrations it had not felt in 10,000 years, the sound of pure emotion given form through a simple wooden instrument. The dragon was beginning to dream again. Kale returned to the shrine every day for the next 2 weeks. Each time, he played his flute a little longer, learned his songs a little better. The shrine had become his sanctuary, the only place where he felt like he mattered. The wooden flute, worn smooth by his grandmother's hands and now his own, was his only connection to a home he barely remembered. What Kale did not know was that deep within the stasis chamber, behind walls of ancient technology and stone, something was changing. The music he played traveled through the air as vibrations, and those vibrations resonated with frequencies that the dragon species had once used to communicate. While modern aliens relied on translation devices and computer languages, the ancient dragons had spoken through harmonics, through emotion made into sound. Vorthax's consciousness drifted in an ocean of darkness. It had been sleeping for so long that it had almost forgotten what waking felt like. The dragon had chosen this sleep willingly. When it realized its kind was the last, when the loneliness of being a final guardian became too heavy to bear, better to sleep and let the universe move on without dragons. But now, something pierced the darkness. A sound, not just any sound, but something the dragon recognized at a level deeper than thought. It was emotion translated into vibration, sadness and hope woven together in simple melody. It reminded Vorthax of when its own kind had been young, before they had become myths, before they had lost the ability to feel joy in small things. The dragon's vast consciousness stirred, reaching toward that sound like a plant reaching toward sunlight. In the colony's research center, Dr. Sella stared at her monitor with all four of her eyes. The Quellan scientists had been studying the shrine's power systems for 3 years, documenting the slow decay of ancient technology. But now her instruments showed something impossible. Energy readings were increasing, not decreasing. The shrine was warming up. "Run the diagnostic again," she told her assistant, her translator device rendering her clicking speech into standard galactic common. "There must be an error." The assistant, a young VRYNN named Tak, worked his controls with rapid movements of his multiple limbs. "No error, Doctor. The readings are accurate. Something inside the shrine is producing energy. The levels have been rising steadily for 14 days. Dr. Sella felt a chill run through her body. In all recorded history, no one had ever successfully awakened a sleeping dragon. Most scientists believed it was impossible. The dragons were gone, and what remained were just biological monuments, empty shells preserved by ancient technology. "We need to investigate immediately," she said. Meanwhile, Kale sat in his usual spot, playing a new song. This one was slower, more melancholic. He had been thinking about his grandmother, about the stories she told of Earth's oceans and forests, places he would never see. The sadness poured out through his flute, each note carrying a piece of his heart. As he played, Kale noticed something strange. The walls of the shrine seemed to be glowing faintly, with patterns he had never seen before. Lines of soft light traced ancient symbols across the black stone, pulsing gently in rhythm with his music. He stopped playing and the lights faded. His heart pounded. He brought the flute back to his lips and played again. The lights returned, brighter this time. They seemed to dance with the melody, responding to the rise and fall of each note. Kale stood slowly, still playing, and walked closer to Vorthax. The dragon remained motionless, but now Kale could see more lights appearing across its scales, bioluminescent patterns that traced the outline of its massive form. Heat radiated from the creature, subtle but unmistakable. Can you hear me?" Kale whispered, lowering the flute. The lights dimmed immediately. On impulse, he raised the flute again and played. The lights returned, pulsing stronger. The dragon was responding to his music, even in its deep sleep. Kale's hands trembled with excitement and fear. He was doing something, creating some kind of connection with this ancient being. The realization filled him with a purpose he had not felt since his grandmother died. He played until his lips grew tired and his fingers ached. When he finally stopped, the shrine slowly returned to darkness, but a faint warmth remained in the air. As Kale walked back toward the colony, he did not notice Dr. Seleth and her team hurrying up the hill toward the shrine, the instruments detecting massive energy spikes. He did not know that his music had been recorded by automatic monitoring systems, that scientists across 3 sectors were now analyzing the harmonic frequencies of a human child's flute. Deep within the shrine, Vorthax's consciousness climbed closer to waking, drawn by the song of a lonely boy who played not for glory or purpose, but simply because music was all he had left. The alarm sirens wailed across the colony 3 days later, their harsh sound cutting through the morning air. Kale stumbled out of his small dormitory room, his heart racing. All around him, aliens of every species rushed through the corridors in panic. He grabbed a passing human woman, one of the few who lived in his section. "What's happening?" he asked. Her face was pale with fear. "The Kresh swarm. They're coming to this sector. The Galactic Council just sent a message. They're not evacuating us. We're too far out, not important enough." She pulled away and kept running. Kale stood frozen as the reality sank in. The Kresh were infamous across the galaxy, a species that had modified themselves for conquest. They stripped planets of resources and took survivors as slave labor, and they were coming here. Around him, people screamed and cried. Some tried to pack their belongings. Others just sat down in despair. The colony had no weapons, no defenses. They were helpless. Kale's hands shook as he walked through chaos. His feet carried him automatically toward the one place that had ever made him feel safe. He climbed the hill to the shrine, tears streaming down his face. The wind had picked up, howling like a warning. Inside the shrine, Kale collapsed onto his usual spot. His whole body trembled with fear. He pulled out his flute with shaking hands and brought it to his lips. The first notes came out broken, filled with all the terror and hopelessness he felt. He did not try to play a proper song. He just let the music pour out of him, raw and desperate. The notes echoed through the chamber, but this time they carried something different. Not just sadness or loneliness, but fear. Fear mixed with defiance, with a refusal to simply give up. It was the sound of a human heart that would not stop fighting, even when fighting seemed pointless. The lights on the walls blazed alive, brighter than Kale had ever seen them. The entire shrine hummed with energy. Heat washed over him in waves. He kept playing, his eyes closed, pouring everything into the music. Then he felt it. A presence. Massive. Ancient. Aware. Kale's eyes snapped open. The lights across Vorthax's scales were no longer dim patterns. They burned like stars, purple and gold and white. And then, for the first time in 10,000 years, the dragon's eyes opened. They were enormous, each one larger than Kale's entire body, and they glowed with an inner light the color of nebulae. The dragon's gaze focused on him, and Kale felt a consciousness press against his mind, vast and deep as an ocean. Words formed in Kale's thoughts, not in any language he knew, but he understood them perfectly. They resonated through him like music made of concepts instead of sound. "Little song weaver, you have awakened something that was meant to sleep forever." Kale dropped his flute. It clattered on the stone floor. I didn't mean to. "Peace, small one." The dragon's voice was gentle despite its power. "You have given me a gift I did not expect. Your music. It reminded me of what I once fought to protect." Vorthax's massive head lifted slightly, and Kale could hear the strain in that simple movement. The dragon was weak, its life force nearly depleted. "I feel the fear in your song," Vorthax continued. "Your people are in danger." "The Kresh are coming," Kale whispered. "Everyone says we're going to die, or worse." The dragon's eyes dimmed slightly with sorrow. "I am dying, little one. I have perhaps hours left, maybe days. I chose to sleep because I was the last, and I was tired of watching civilizations rise and fall while I remained." Outside, alarms continued to wail. Kale could hear the distant sound of ships launching, some colonists trying to flee on whatever vessels they could steal or borrow. "But your music," the dragon said, and its voice grew stronger. "It carries something my kind valued above all else. Pure emotion, pure creation. Most species in this galaxy have lost that. They rely on machines to make their art, on computers to create their beauty. But you make music because it is part of your soul." Dr. Seleth burst into the shrine at that moment, followed by her entire research team. They stopped dead, their various mouths and breathing apparatus falling open in shock. The dragon was awake. The impossible had happened. Vorthax's gaze moved to the scientist, then back to Kale. "I cannot save myself, Songweaver, but perhaps I can save you. If you are willing to help an old dragon sing one final song." Kale picked up his flute with trembling hands. "What do you need me to do?" Dr. Seleth tried to speak, her translator struggling to keep up with her rapid clicks of alarm. The dragon, it's actually awake. This is impossible. Vorthax's great eyes shifted to her. Nothing is impossible, small scientist. Only improbable. Now leave. What happens next is between me and the Song Weaver. The power in those words was undeniable. Dr. Seleth and her team backed away slowly, their instrument forgotten, and fled from the shrine. Kale could hear them shouting outside, calling for emergency protocols, but their voices faded into the background. The dragon lowered its head closer to Kale, close enough that he could feel its breath, warm and smelling of ozone and ancient things. I have enough life force remaining for one final act, but I cannot do it alone. I need a conduit, something to channel my power through, something that already carries emotion and intention. Kale looked down at his grandmother's flute. My music? Yes, your kind retains something precious that most species lost as they advanced. You still create with your hearts, not just your minds. That raw emotional expression is a form of power older than technology. The dragon's eyes pulse with light. I will teach you a song. The song of endings and beginnings. My people use it to defend those who could not defend themselves. Will it hurt? Kale asked, his voice small. Perhaps. I do not know what it will cost you. Little one, I will not lie about that. But if you do nothing, the crash will come, and everyone you know will suffer. Kale thought of the other humans in the colony, the VRYNN children who played in the courtyards, even the Althari who never spoke to him but sang their beautiful songs at night. He thought of his grandmother and what she would do. Teach me, he said. The dragon's consciousness flowed into Kale's mind, and suddenly he understood. The melody was complex, unlike anything humans had ever created. It existed in frequencies that human ears could barely perceive, but somehow his grandmother's flute could produce them. The song was mathematics and emotion woven together, a harmonic frequency that could reshape reality itself. Outside, alarms blared a new warning. The Kresh fleet had entered the system. They would reach the planet in minutes. Kale raised the flute to his lips, his hand steady despite his fear. Vorthax's scales began to glow brighter, energy building around the dragon's massive form. Play, Song Weaver. Play with everything you have. Pour your fear into it. Pour your hope. Pour your love for those you want to protect. Let the music be your weapon. Kale began to play. The first notes were unlike anything he had ever produced. They resonated through the shrine, through the stone, through his very bones. Vorthax amplified the sound, channeling its remaining life force through the frequencies. The shrine exploded with light. Energy rippled outward in waves, spreading across the planet's surface and up into space. Kale played harder, his fingers moving faster. The song built in intensity. He felt pain shooting through his hands, felt his lips splitting from pressure, but he did not stop. He thought of every person in the colony. He thought of his grandmother teaching him to play. He thought of every lonely night he had spent in this shrine, playing for an audience he thought could never hear him, above the planet. The Kresh fleet emerged from their jump, 70 warships, bristling with weapons designed to break worlds. Their commanders prepared to send the standard demand for surrender. Then the song reached them. It traveled through the vacuum of space as a quantum wave, a harmonic frequency that touched every ship simultaneously. Computers malfunctioned, their circuits overloaded by patterns they were never designed to process. Weapon systems shut down. Navigation went dark. But more than that, the song carried emotion. Pure, undiluted feeling translated into vibration. The Kresh soldiers, genetically modified to feel only aggression and obedience, suddenly experienced something new. They felt awe. They felt wonder. They felt the desperate hope of a child trying to save people he cared about. For creatures designed never to question their purpose, the sensation was overwhelming. Ship captains hesitated. Soldiers lowered their weapons in confusion. The fleet stopped advancing, hanging in space as their crews struggled to understand what they were feeling. In the shrine, Kale played until blood ran from his fingers, until his vision blurred with tears and exhaustion. Vorthax glowed like a star, burning to the last of its ancient life. The dragon's voice echoed in Kale's mind one final time. Well done, little song weaver. You have reminded the universe what it means to create beauty in the face of darkness. The song broadcast across every emergency frequency in the sector. Galactic Council ships patrolling 3 systems away detected it, their instruments recording harmonics that should not exist. A Vexian commander, hardened by 50 years of military service, found tears streaming down her face as she listened. An automated defense station's artificial intelligence experienced something its programmers insisted was impossible. It felt moved by beauty. The Council fleet changed course immediately, jumping toward Drakeneth, 7 at maximum speed. In the shrine, Kale collapsed to his knees, the flute falling from his bleeding fingers. He could barely see through the tears and exhaustion. Every part of his body hurt, but he had played the entire song, every note exactly as Vorthax had taught him. The dragon's light began to fade. Its massive form, which had glowed like a second sun, dimmed to a soft twilight glow. Kale crawled closer, ignoring the pain in his hands. "Did it work?" he whispered. "Yes, little one." The Kresh fleet is confused, their aggression broken by feelings they were never meant to experience. "And help is coming. Your people will be safe." The dragon's voice in his mind was growing quieter. "You have given me a gift I never expected to receive. In my final moments, you reminded me of what my kind was before we became myths. We were protectors. We were guardians. And we understood that true strength lies not in power, but in choosing to use that power to defend beauty and innocence. Vorthax is great. I focus on the flute lying on the ground. Pick it up, Song Weaver." Kale's hands shook as he reached for the instrument. The moment his fingers touched it, light flowed from the dragon into the wood. The flute grew warm, and Kale felt a presence settle into it, like an echo of something vast folding itself into something small. "I give you the last piece of myself," Vorthax said, "a fragment of my consciousness, bound to your instrument. When you play, I will listen. When you need guidance, I will whisper. You will never be alone again, Kale of Earth." The dragon had used his name. Kale realized with a start that Vorthax had known it all along, had looked into his heart and understood everything about him. "Your species understands something we forgot, little Song Weaver. You create beauty even in darkness. You make art not because it is useful, but because it is necessary for your souls. Never lose that. Teach it to others. Show this galaxy that advancement and emotion are not opposites." The light in Vorthax's eyes began to fade. The dragon's breathing slowed. Its massive form started to crystallize, scales transforming into something like diamond or glass, preserving the dragon's shape for eternity. "Thank you," Kale sobbed. "Thank you for listening to my music. Thank you for playing it, young one. Now go. Show them what a human child and an ancient dragon accomplished together." The dragon's eyes closed one final time. The light went out. Vorthax's entire body completed its transformation, becoming a crystal monument that caught and reflected every bit of light in the shrine. The ancient guardian was gone, but its beauty remained. Kale sat there for a long time, clutching his flute, crying for a friend he had barely known, but who had changed everything. Dr. Seleth found him an hour later. The Galactic Council fleet had arrived and driven off the bewildered Kresh forces. The colony was safe. She knelt beside Kale, her alien features soft with something like understanding. "What you did," she said quietly, "it will change everything. The Council is calling it a miracle. They want to understand how a human child with a simple instrument created a defensive field that stopped an entire invasion fleet." Kale looked at his flute. In the light, he could see faint patterns now etched into the wood, symbols that looked like the ones that had appeared on Vorthax's scales. "It wasn't just me," he said. "It was the music. It was what my grandmother taught me. It was Vorthax remembering what mattered." Word spread quickly through the galaxy. The human boy who played a song that stopped a war. The last dragon who woke one final time to protect the innocent. Drakeneth. 7 became a protected world. The crystallized form of Vorthax a memorial that beings travel from across the stars to witness. Kale became a teacher, showing other species the human art of music, explaining how emotion could be translated into sound. Some learned easily, others struggled, but they all tried, and in trying, they reconnected with something their civilizations had lost in their rush toward technological perfection. Years later, Kale still visited the shrine every day. He would sit before the crystal dragon and play his flute. And sometimes, when the light hit the crystal just right, he could see patterns flickering in its depths. And he would hear, soft as a whisper in his mind, the voice of an ancient friend telling him to keep playing, to keep creating beauty, to never stop being human. The echo remained,